Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Okay. So we are going to get to the origins of suffering. Wouldn't that be nice to know? They say that it might be helpful if we like to alleviate it. A lot of times our attempts to alleviate suffering actually is the cause of a lot of suffering. So some clarity here could be helpful. We'll take a little peek and see what we got. Here we go. Is the text. I got it all queued up here. So the truth of the origins of suffering. And a little quote from the Essential Nectar. Since beginningless time, the great demon of self-grasping, thinking, I, has dwelt in my heart's recesses. Marking self off from other, it generates greed and hatred. With these karmas heaped up, through karma I spin in samsara. So that's actually the whole little gambit there, the origins, 3 root poisons, this self-grasping, it's delusional, that gives rise to greed and hatred, often called attachment, and aversion or anger. And then from that, karma, samsara, all that arises. The Buddha realized through his own experience that the origins or causes of all the various types of samsaric suffering are twofold: karma and delusions. Often you'll hear karma and kleshas. So here the word is delusions. These are the things we need to eliminate if we wish to be free of suffering in samsara. And fortunately, it's possible to do this. Of the 2 causes, the main one is delusions or mental afflictions. So when you hear klesha, they're talking about mental afflictions, because they are the factors motivating the actions that lead to suffering. For instance, if we did not have anger in our mind, we would not act in harmful ways that cause problems for others and ourselves, now and in future lives. There are numerous delusions that come and go in our mind, such as the 3 poisons mentioned earlier: ignorance of karma, anger or hatred, and attachment or craving. It's an interesting way of putting that, because they're going to present it in the 6 a little differently. So, ignorance of karma, anger or hatred, attachment or craving. I would just leave it as ignorance at this moment. Anger or hatred and attachment or craving. Just because they're going to add the ignorance of karma kind of as a 6th. These 3 are included in the 6 root delusions explained below. In addition to these, there is a list of 20 secondary delusions explained in text on the mind and mental factors. So there'll be a quiz on that later. Make sure you get the 20, and then the other sort of 56 mental factors. That'll be good to know. All right, this chapter, though, includes meditations on identifying the 6 root delusions, understanding their faults, and applying antidotes to them. The main delusion to eliminate is ignorance, specifically the ignorance that grasps self and all other phenomena as inherently existent. So that's what I was talking about, I think. And it's nice to I often like to use the word misunderstanding. instead of ignorance. Who likes to be called ignorant? I like to be misunderstood. So this is the core, right? We're actually grasping the self and all other phenomena as inherently existent. Also known as the root of samsara, it's the core. It is the main issue. Its antidote is the wisdom realizing emptiness, because it sees things as they really are. That is, empty of inherent existence. This wisdom is the complete opposite to ignorance. That's why it can eliminate ignorance and all other delusions. So all of Buddhism goes right here. If we actually understood ourselves and our experiences, we would be free of all this mental, emotional suffering and afflictions in the prison of samsara. So everything is going towards just reality, basically. That's what I really like about it. I mean, just let's get to reality. Not easy to do, but it's nice to not have to have, just sort of mythical things. Just let's find out what's true. It takes time and effort to cultivate this wisdom, so it's worthwhile learning other antidotes with which we can manage and decrease our delusions. Included here are meditations for dealing with anger and attachment, two disturbing emotions that create extensive havoc in our lives. So those would be, when they talk about the three, ignorance, and you're going to see anger and attachment, or aversion and attachment, or hatred and greed, but it's all about grabbing onto something or wanting something to be away. And those arise from misunderstanding ourselves. So ignorance, attachment, aversion. This chapter also includes a meditation on 6 factors that cause delusions to arise in our minds, and 1 on how we die and take rebirth. Some people feel shame, guilt, or even self-hatred when they recognize delusions in their minds. Such reactions are not helpful and only serve to exacerbate our problems rather than relieve them. It is also unreasonable to react in these ways because delusions are transitory. They come and go in our mind. They're not who we are. So it's unwise to identify with them. Yet most people have a habit of doing this. When anger arises in our mind, for instance, we automatically think, I am angry, as if I and anger are one and the same. This is clearly mistaken. If I and anger were one, I should be angry all the time, 24/7. But no one is like that. I mean, I kind of knew this guy, Jimmy. He was, I don't know, maybe he was like that. I didn't know what he was like when he was sleeping, though. But generally speaking, since delusions are impermanent, we can use antidotes to diminish and eventually overcome them completely, such that they will never arise again. But that won't happen overnight. It takes time and consistent effort. So I just want to go back to this point here, and the good news is we can remove these, and there's a, basically giving us the directions. It's, how wonderful. And it says up here, some people, let's see if I can highlight that, feel shame, guilt, or in self-hatred when they recognize illusions in their mind. Such reactions are not helpful and only serve to exacerbate our problems rather than relieve them. So you will hear me consistently talk about the big issue of a self-critical mind, the inability to be self-compassionate, this beating ourselves up, this holding ourselves in ways that they're not helpful. And so just right here, I love that they point that out, that if I start to recognize that my mental afflictions are not who I am, there's a real opportunity then to go, Okay, they're temporary, right? I have not felt shame 24/7. I have felt shame for a period of time, and then I've also felt surprise, and I felt wonder, then I felt some aches, then I felt some relief, then I felt hope, and then I felt a little bored, then I felt. So when you start understanding, like in 10 minutes, I can go through a range of feelings of shame, and then all of a sudden I get a phone call. I'm talking to somebody. I'm not thinking about shame, not feeling shameful. They're telling me a joke. I'm kind of laughing. So I'm kind of happy. And then I find it's a bad joke. I think maybe I'm not that happy. And then they give me some good news. And, where's the shame, right? Where's the guilt? The mind's gone through a whole bunch of things in a phone call. And then I set down the phone, realized I didn't even know that person, so it was a wrong call. And, then I'm curious, and then, something else happens in my mind. And then we can, if we start actually paying attention to emotions and afflictions, feelings of joy, feelings of sadness, feelings of despair, feelings of hope, a whole lot of intermediate feelings, a little anxiety, a little excitement, a little boredom. We're going to notice that all of those will come and go. And everything I just said could easily happen within a half an hour. I can go from anxiety to surprise, like in a moment. I can go from surprise to relief in another moment. And I forget all this, I start, it's funny because, we don't typically identify with surprise because it doesn't last long, right? You're usually not surprised very long. You get surprise and then, then you adjust to whatever your surprise is. Relief, it's funny, relief doesn't tend to last long either. But boy, shame, man, that can last for a little while, And one of the reasons it lasts so long is because we nurture it. We identify strongly with it. We contemplate the causes of it, and what I did. And so typically, and this is just modern Western psychology at this point, is if you start to just step back and notice emotions, they will come and go, and they will come and go, and they will come and go. But we re-trigger them. So Paul Ekman's work talks about 9 ways to re-trigger and maintain emotional state. And we ruminate, we bring it back up, we dwell on it, we think about it, and we just keep it alive. In which case, I'm just keeping this harmful emotion alive on my own. Whereas if I didn't identify with it, it would come, it would go. And so that's nice to know. It's not easy to do. It's kind of like one of those things that goes, oh, really? That would be nice. Can't do it, but at least, I understand. I understand. And once I understand, that's helpful. And then we can start developing the skill of not re-triggering those afflictive emotional states. And, there's some antidotes in here that they'll talk about. But it's so important to recognize that the thoughts, feelings, emotions that arise in us, are not who you are. They're experiences you're having, and they're always temporary. And boy, if I could just hang on that even when I'm feeling down, that's helpful. I remember, we're going back 1999, early 2000. Just going through a depression, everything in my world kind of blew up, and everything I thought I knew about my life was not what it was. And suddenly a single dad, suddenly doing, trying to figure out life. And it was interesting because I had, the typical depression, no energy, can't concentrate, not much drive. Fortunately, I had a daughter who's in senior year to make sure she gets fed, clothed. And I had college and I had a job. I had these things I needed to do, and I could barely function. But there was something interesting there, and is that I never thought it would last. Like every day I woke up, I never felt hopeless. I just felt depressed, and that was through like 15 years of recovery training that I had that taught me, about things greater than my ego and self, and it lasted for a few months. But during that time, I never felt like it was going to last. And guess what? It didn't. I'm here today. And not too depressed, but I still have a bunch of dad jokes. So, as we, for me, that was so helpful. It didn't mean I wasn't depressed, but it meant I knew it wasn't going to last. I knew there would be an end to it. I knew that I would come out of it. And actually, that became the ground from which my Buddhist path came alive. All the mindfulness trainings I've learned, it all came out of that period of time in my life. And it really became quite fruitful. So there's another paradox here. We just spent a bunch of time on the truth of suffering. And if we don't notice the suffering, we probably wouldn't be here in this Dharma, getting the access to the path to eliminate suffering. It's kind of like, when I went to a dentist in my early 20s, having never gone to a dentist. And they asked me, why are you here? And I thought that was the most insane question. Because I'm in pain. Like, why else would you go to a freaking dentist? It hurts. They did teach me that if you go every 6 months, you probably won't have to be all this pain. So I've tried to do that since. And so often we as humans will notice our afflictions, we'll try to do good things, and we'll see that we can't maintain it or do some other things, and we'll get frustrated with ourselves, and we don't even realize we are actually engaging in the First Noble Truth, the foundation of the whole path, which is the truth of suffering. I'm recognizing my limitations. I'm recognizing the problem. And that's something to rejoice in. I am recognizing that I am, limited, and that my experiences, I can't just do what I want, and want to be a good person, and I do some things that aren't so healthy. And what I'm really doing is taking some real clarity to the First Noble Truth of suffering, that I have conditioning, that I have this deeply rooted conditioning, and I'm identifying that. And then we get to the second one. It's starting to understand that conditioning, how it arises. And then we get to the third, and it says, guess what? You don't have to have all this. You can be free. And then the fourth one is, here's how you do it. So the point I really want to keep emphasizing is, when I am in afflictive mental and emotional states, even doing something unhealthy, if I know I'm doing it and that it's not how I want to be, you are actually incredibly advanced on the path. And it's something to really acknowledge rather than beat ourselves up for. We're actually recognizing with wisdom the depths of the nature of samsara, which will motivate us to seek freedom. We're getting the diagnosis down, right, for treatment. Hey, Greta.
Hey, thank you for explaining that, like elaborating on it with your own personal experience too. It's really helpful. And I was thinking about what you said. Like, I was like, yeah, there is times where I'm like, this definitely isn't gonna last. But then there are times where I'm like, where I have been like, I definitely want to die. This is gonna last forever. It's always been this way and it's never gonna change. And even if it gets better, it's coming back around the bend to suck again. And yeah, it's just interesting to acknowledge that. But then I was thinking about the shame bit because I've that's probably definitely been my Achilles heel in this process for sure. And it's getting better, it's definitely getting better. It's still there and it's getting better. But um I'm just curious, like, because it's like, and I think you've said this before, it's like acknowledging it, like seeing it, and maybe you even said it tonight and and I missed it, but like not like it doesn't quite undo it though, it's like knowing like, oh, here I am, I'm lacerating myself, it's almost like anger, like it has this like like extreme embodied seductive quality to it that is incredibly convincing. It's very, very, very persuasive. At least it has been in the past, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate more, like laser in more on like that process of like unraveling that, because once those tentacles are in there, it's quite something to experience the relief of understanding it's not real, you
Hmm.
know so I'll just be quiet there. Thanks.
Sure, that shouldn't take more than 3 minutes to respond to. Um, yeah, so the unraveling is what the whole thing's about ultimately. But I think it's valuable to think of it as two different steps. And the first one is, what's a skill I can do to uh, to stop engaging with the shame right away. The unraveling of the causes of shame so it doesn't keep coming. That's the longer process. But then we can kind of work on what are some skillful methods when I notice it and the tentacles are deep and I'm in it, right? What are some things I could do to alleviate me from making it worse, or even maybe stop stop doing it at that moment, which doesn't remove it, right? It just gets my mind in a different place, gets me in a different place, shifts, and so this was yeah, this actually came out in the Wisdom of Meaningful Life course, where my mother-in-law was trying to be very helpful, where she's don't you need to know the root cause? And when we're talking about actually, how about I just learn to stop doing it first, then do the root cause? And, so it was really a great dialogue, made me think about it in this way. And so initially we can learn some skills to just put the baseball bat down, you know, but the whole journey is how we unravel it. And as we go a little further in the text, we're going to see, obviously the issue is I'm identifying with a self that doesn't exist in the way I think it does. That's the unraveling. Because if you didn't identify with that, you wouldn't have the shame of a bad self. Because why would I? But that's a whole journey, right? So, and I've mentioned this many times, but the thing that helps me the most with shame is I recognize I owe it to everyone else to not do that, and that the best way for me to make up for any harmful, we call it a living amends kind of thing, is to like, I'm not helping you when I'm in shame. I'm not helping the person I've harmed when I'm in shame. It's a very self-centered, selfish thing in my mind, and so because I can't do it for me initially, so I don't feel like I'm worth anything, right? So I'm like incapable of that. But when it was shown to me that that it, I'm like the most valuable thing I can do is to not beat myself up for others. And then I found the strength to do it because I owed it to my daughter. I owed it to my, partner, my family. I owed it to the people in my life. And so it's kind of weird. I could do things for others I wouldn't do for myself. And so for me, as soon as shame or criticism comes up in my mind, real quickly, I know that that's just a self-centered attitude that is selfish, and I owe it to whomever I just did to not do that, to learn from it and to grow from it. And so in my own little twisted way of seeing myself as not worthy of that, my way out was recognizing the value of using it to be better. And so that helps me not engage with this shame. It helps me not engage with self-criticism. It helps me recognize now that it's just an afflicted, self-centered thought now. And what did I learn? How can I be helpful? What can I do to improve the situation? Which has happened, it's been a long time, but now it's much quicker. And so that was one of the ways that was just a method for me that was helpful, to just put the bat down. And then over time, engaging in these practices of cultivating loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, unraveling the grasping, becoming more aware of the sensations when they arise, not letting them get as strong. And then, I also have the opportunity to draw the support of my teachers. And, where I'm not strong enough, the blessings of my teachers are. And, allow them to step in. And they got a lot more merit than I do. And they're here in my heart. And their teachings are in my heart. And all their wisdom is right here. And I just need to get out of the way.
Yeah,
And,
thank you. I forgot about that part. I can't, like, I'm causing harm to, I'm not available to the world if I'm hating myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right, Katie.
Thank you, John, and everyone. Great to see you all. John, I've heard you share that before, and I'm curious if then your experience has now shifted after using that method, where you're able to, I guess where I would like to be is that I don't have to trick myself, that I could also be like, yes, I'm one of billion sentient beings, and I too, as one of these billion sentient beings, like I do it for myself and all of the other beings. Because it feels like there's still grasping and distortion if I'm like, yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No. And, yeah. So initially it's a skillful method that was helpful. Now, when such a tendency arises, I know that's just delusion, and that's not who I am, which is what this is teaching.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty quick to that nowadays, but curiosity pops up quickly. Like, what do I get to learn from this? What's the lesson here? But, that's been a journey to get there. And that's kind of the discussion, initially so entrenched in a sense of self that it's strong and intractable. And then I need to stop doing more damage, start to heal, engage and unravel these misperceptions. And then, these days, pretty much, even the thought of anger or afflictions, it's pretty much saying, boy, you're kind of delusional there, Johnny. You're thinking you're somebody you're not. And yeah. But then the fine line there, which is we can go towards nihilism and go and disassociate from those. and you don't want to go there, right? And so you want to feel them, experience them, learn from them, know that they are an integral part of your experience. They're just not ultimately who you are. So that's the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think my own experience in that process is also that as I respond more and more skillfully, like they're arising for a reason, right? The karmic conditions have come together for me to experience whatever's arising. And if I'm responding more and more skillfully, I'm metabolizing that karma. And I don't know how much of that karma exists, right? It does feel like there's a trajectory that's positive.
Yeah, and you're cultivating healthy, meaningful karma. Responding skillfully.
Yeah. That's helpful for me to hear the full, or have a better understanding of your full trajectory with that method and process. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, as we get in the text, we'll unpack this a little bit. So let's pop back in here. Just as you guys have noticed of late, the self-critical mind is such a huge obstacle that it's really nice to really start reflecting on that. Just noticing that is actually a step into the path. All right. So yeah, up here it says, but this won't happen overnight. Take time and consistent effort. Remember these points if you become upset and self-critical when noticing delusions in yourself. Learn to identify with your Buddha nature rather than your delusions. So that's ultimately at your heart. You start to recognize that you are that which is not harm, not delusional, that Buddha nature. But that again, even learning to know that your Buddha nature is there, to identify with it, that's a journey. Having compassion and patience towards yourself for being under the control of delusions. That will also make it easier for you to feel compassion and patience towards other beings in samsara, realizing that they are in the same predicament. And so I kind of like to think that, we're all in varying levels of disease, and various levels of receiving various levels of care. And so that really helps me as I interact with others, know that, they've got this dis-ease too, And so let's be thoughtful about how we interact. Excuse me. All right. I'm glad she put such a good effort into that point. All right. Delusions, the main cause of suffering. Delusions are afflictive mental factors that, when they arise, make the mind disturbed and unpeaceful. This is especially obvious with anger. When we get angry, our mind becomes agitated. We have trouble thinking clearly, and even our body is restless, unable to sit still. Delusions are also unrealistic. They cause us to see people and things in distorted ways. When we're angry at someone, we see that person as permanently 100% bad, devoid of any good qualities. But no one is that bad. Everyone has positive qualities, and their negative traits are transitory. Conversely, attachment involves seeing a person or object as 100% wonderful and able to bring us eternal happiness. But this too is unrealistic, as we eventually discover. The following meditation goes through the 6 root delusions. Contemplate each one to understand its particular features and identify it in your experience. Try as well to recognize the problems they cause in your life, in society, and the world. So What I do, looking at time is we'll just touch, so we're aware of six. And we may have a little time to look at ignorance. So ignorance, again, I like to use the word misperception, misunderstanding. Ignorance, though, is deeper than that, right? It's, I just don't know, which is the whole core issue, and we'll get into that. Then there's attachment, which we talked about, which is really exaggerated qualities and clinging that these objects will make us happy, feel good. Anger or aversion. This is the stuff I don't like. It's in my way. I don't want it. And then arrogance or pride. Sometimes it's called pride, arrogance, which is real interesting. Real strong sense of I, but I find it fascinating. It usually arises out of insecurity, actually, but there's sort of an arrogance, a belief about oneself. Deluded doubt, which is a big one for us humans, is this idea that we're not good enough to do this. And then deluded views. And so this is why I was referring at the start. The main ignorance is really about self and inherent existence. And this one is around sort of that misunderstanding around karma and the way things exist in the world. So it's pretty similar, but it's got a different view around karma, cause and effect, and so forth. So those would be the root six. And I do want to talk about the first one. But Nicole's had her hand up, so let's hear from Nicole.
Hi, my internet's unstable, sorry. I wondered if you could talk at some point about how to work with the text. So, you do your 10-minute or if we're doing a 24-minute to do the first half, the concentration, and then reading through this, like we open our eyes and we read and then we think about it. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I don't know if you want to do it now or at some other point.
Okay, and just so everyone on the same page here, all these meditations are what they're called, analytical meditations. So they're meditations which are to gain an insight, gain some understanding. So the suggestions here are, if you're going to do this as a meditation, they kind of guide you to settling, grounding, and then bringing, these contemplations and really analyzing them, seeing how they hold up, seeing what you understand about them. Me personally, I would say I would do a shamatha practice as a shamatha practice. And then I would do this just grounding for a little bit, taking a little time if I was going to do this as a meditation. You could try to put it all in one, do about 10 minutes shamatha and kind of bring it to mind. I guess the reason I'm hesitant is I wouldn't make this a primary meditation. I would make shamatha like my primary. Like that's what I do no matter what. And then I add some other meditation. So if I'm doing this, I would do it on top of a shamatha where I would just take, the first, 5-10 minutes, just grounding, relaxing, breathing, and then engage in this practice. And the reason I say that is I just think the biggest issue in our life is attention. And, that's the biggest issue. And so I wouldn't cut down shamatha. I would just add this. And I would do it that way, personally.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the misperception of self. This, let's see, I got the Kindle. Let me go back. I'll share it with you. I clicked on the wrong little tab there. Okay, here we go. So the whole problem begins with, wow, there we go. I've got this little pop-up blocking my text. That's what my issue is. Okay. There we go. In Buddhism, ignorance does not mean being uneducated. A person can be highly educated and still be ignorant. You can just not know stuff. In general, ignorance is a lack of understanding about how things exist in this context. And it can manifest in different ways. One type that is particularly problematic is ignorance of karma. This is the ignorance included in the 3 root poisonous attitudes: ignorance, anger, and attachment. People who have this are unaware of which actions bring suffering and which ones bring happiness as a result. They may act contrary to karma and thus contrary to what they wish for. Can you identify this type of ignorance in yourself? Yeah, I want to say a lot about that. So in the context of Lamrim practice, the main type of ignorance that we need to recognize and deal with is seeing things in a way that is opposite to reality. For example, this is the ignorance that believes in an I or self that is solid, inherently existent, and independent of everything else. In reality, there is no such self. Our I is merely what is designated in relation to our body and mind. This is really where the core of this ignorance is. And we just want to be clear. It says, in reality, there is no such self, which doesn't say there isn't a self. It says, in reality, there is no such inherently self-existent, independent self. That self doesn't exist. And that's what we tend to identify with, right? I'm over here, I'm in Crestone, you're over there, you're different than me, I'm inherently this body, this inherent independent self. Okay, that doesn't exist. In reality, and this is not Buddhism, this is just reality, okay? We'll talk about that. Our I is merely what is designated in relation to our body and mind. Ignorance fails to understand this and clings to a false notion of I. It also sees all other beings and things in the same mistaken way. Regarding this false I as the center of the universe, we then experience other delusions, such as attachment to people who help us, aversion to those who harm us, and so on. So it's, we're the center of our universe, and we evaluate everyone in the world based on our view and our experience. Therefore, this ignorance is the root of samsara, the source of all other delusions, as well as the karmic actions that keep us circling in samsara. So that went right to that first opening quote. Do you think you have this type of ignorance in your mind, or do you think you know yourself correctly? And so this can sometimes be intellectually pretty easy to grasp, sometimes not so much. But actually, to actually realize that, that's a whole different thing. So, when you think of yourself, if you were to describe yourself, you describe what? Your body, your habits, your personality. We'll sit there and we'll kind of describe a self. And then, if we look a little further, is there, first off, anything independent about that? And then you said, well, okay. Probably not much, right? Everything's like, even my thoughts are dependent, upon this body, this existence. And, and we can take it all the way down to, you're, even your body, right? Came from your parents, sperm and egg, came from their grandparents. There's nothing independent about this body, this mind, and everything we know, everything that we've learned, everything, just you've heard me say this so many times. Intellectually, we kind of get that, okay? So the independent part, I can, pretty easy to refute. And then, but this sort of inherently existent sort of sense of my personality, of who I am, well, then we can start to recognize, well, is any of that consistent? Or are you optimistic sometimes, not so optimistic, a little pessimistic, a little joyful? You start to notice, well, okay, thoughts, feelings, emotions, they're all temporary. Certain times in my life, I had certain views and beliefs. I don't have them today. And then my body's changing moment to moment. Thoughts, mind streams changing moment to moment. Everything I think, say, and do is arising in dependence upon the stimulus that I'm getting from what I'm attending to, from the person in front of me, from what I'm doing. Whether or not there's some chips and salsa back at the cabin might have a lot to do with how I'm attending to this. And it's pretty good salsa, by the way. So, everything that, whatever the mind goes to, well, okay, now I'm having a different experience. And so I start to notice that everything about me is arising in dependence upon, right? Independence upon causes, conditions, physical, mental, experiential, and even, what I'm attending to in a dream is going to affect my body. It's going to react as though it's actually happening to me, heart rate and so forth. And so, when we step back from this self-grasping John speaking to you, I can observe that this John is rising in dependence upon, right, what he's attending to, his previous life experiences, the things that have happened, different things that he's engaged in, all the other people that has ever done anything that contributed to my life, including my teachers and my parents and grandparents. By teacher, I can go back my kindergarten teacher and people who built the school. And the fact that I didn't get chocolate milk at school like my brother did, I got the white milk. So, apparently he was allergic to milk, so he got chocolate milk. It's pretty scandalous what you'll work with to get the kind of milk you want when you're a little kid. Moms have to pick their battles. So, all of these things contribute to who we are and what we do, and that there's not, this independent John that I'm lugging around every day that's telling me what to do. But it sure feels like it, right? It sure feels like it. And so intellectually knowing this is one thing. But boy, we're in our bodies, aren't we? Boy, we're in these sensations. And this is the whole issue, that we really identify with a self that doesn't exist in the way we think it does, right? We put these qualities on ourselves. I'm this kind of person. I'm that kind of person. I have these qualities. I don't have those qualities. I am like this. And all those labels stick, and then we become those labels, and then we describe ourselves as this kind of person or that kind of person. And then, then there's the people I like, people I don't like. Coincidentally, the people I like think a lot like I do. So clearly they're cool, smart, intelligent, wise people. And then the people I don't like, well, they think very differently, and how stupid can they be, and blah blah blah. And so I don't like them. These people have harmed me. These people have helped me. Pretty much everything in the world. Just I'm going through this lens of what I resonate with, what I don't like, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And I don't even understand. I'm the one filling in the details, right? It's coming from my experience. And so that's kind of the problem, right? I kind of view you as you are independent and separate. And I don't even realize that how I'm experiencing you has a lot to do with me. Not everything, but a lot. And boy, to unravel that, well, that's what the path, right? The path is to unravel that. And that takes, some very skillful practices. And I think one of the most amazing things is that these teachings give you specific directions on how to do that. And it's like, wow, here's how you do it. Here's the issue, here's the medicine, here's how you do it. And and then the big thing is, maybe I don't want to do it. And then who doesn't want to do it? Which I? Well, this I'm grasping to gets very tricky, I mean, I'm here in this beautiful retreat center. I have a certain portion of my day for practice, and I have a certain day I need to work, a little free time in the evening, and there's a mix of my attention to what I'm doing, free time in the evening. It could be unraveling the whole path to complete liberation and Buddhahood, or, take a little walk, or I can go do this, and, it's funny to watch that balance in the mind. And so this consistently beginning anew each day, every day, new opportunity. Take a few steps in the direction, engage in these teachings, let them soak in, apply them, practice, and be a real good friend with ourselves in this process. That's the real journey. And loving kindness, compassion towards self and others, as we seek to unravel deeply rooted conditions, habits and tendencies and misperceptions about ourselves and others. But as we engage, we get to see, we get to know, we get to unravel. And then we'll find that there's less seeds of anger, there's less seeds of insecurity, there's less seeds of jealousy, there's less of those, because we stopped watering them. And we started watering seeds of our confidence, of our value, of our capacity. And, that starts to show up more of it. We start to have some access to our ultimate Buddha nature. And that's quite a source. So we'll pick this up, but this week, the invitation is to start to notice where I comes up a lot. And until you can notice to work with emotions and feelings and notice their temporary nature without identifying with them as who you are, but rather what you are experiencing. That's going to be good. A good foundation here. So it's an interesting presentation. I probably should have read thoroughly. I haven't quite seen these 6 represent exactly like this. Usually the ignorance is much more about misunderstanding self, and the 6th one's much more about karma and phenomena. But you can see where misunderstanding is where all the trouble gets. And then there's another presentation on 5 instead of 6, which is, there'll be a test. I know everybody's taking notes. Ignorance, attachment, aversion. Then it's pride and jealousy. Just 5, those 5, pride and jealousy. And that way, ignorance is wrapped in self, karma, everything. So misunderstanding, so those 5. So that's ignorance, attachment, aversion, pride, jealousy. You can see where pride and jealousy are really going to cause a lot of chaos. But we'll stick with this because these are in this text. And but this week, let's work on noticing misunderstanding, misidentifying, and kind of note the temporary nature of these feelings, thoughts, emotions that arise, but not run from them. To just know that they're part of your experience and they're information, they're helping you in some way. And what's that? The Rumi quote on that, where you open the door to all the emotions, for they all have something to offer. And they're here to show us our mind. They're here to show us the path. And the first part of that path is identifying the problem, the truth of suffering. And wow, what a way to have an opportunity to transform ourselves, to heal. It's hard to heal when we don't know we're sick. But boy, when we know there's an illness, well, we'll seek out a cure. All right. Not much to think about. I know a few of you are wondering about that salsa I got in the room. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not going to name names. Did that, I think, last week or something. They wanted to brand. All right. Okay, so we are going to dedicate the merit and the wisdom that we have cultivated here. Bring up the dedication first here. So what an incredible opportunity that we have. We actually have access to teachings that unlock the path of freedom, that point out causes of suffering and methods to alleviate it. A lot of things we could have been doing on a Wednesday night, but we have chosen to engage in understanding ourselves and our experience, to explore teachings that may liberate us from challenges and struggles that we face, or that deep yearning to know ourselves, to be free. These teachings have been passed down through time. They have been practiced, applied, transmitted a great deal of effort from countless others and made available to us. So let us dedicate any and all merit from our time together, from these teachings, and from any seeds of wisdom that have been accumulated for the benefit of all sentient beings. May they be free of suffering. And for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately recognize our own Buddha nature and be of greatest benefit to all. And for those who care to, you can join me in the dedication. By this merit may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om